histamine intolerance. So this is something new, but what isn't new is histamine. Histamine, if you remember, causes vasopermeability, allowing more immune cells to act on the sebaceous gland, causing increase in inflammation. Histamine is also very important for the itching effect that is produced, and it also has effects on keratin retention. So histamine, just like any other molecule, needs to be broken down. But the other interesting aspect is that histamine is also in food. So although this food histamine is not necessarily as active as something like our own histamine, it can still have an effect on our body. Hence the creation or formation of histamine intolerance. So bring your attention over here. You have two enzymes, diamine oxidase and histamine N-methyltransferase. Both of these enzymes break down histamine. So this is important because if it's broken down, it doesn't have an effect anymore, or as great of one. So what can cause this histamine intolerance? Well, for one, the most obvious aspect is that you don't break it down, so histamine stays in your body. Another aspect, you don't have enough of this enzyme, so that speaks to this. The other aspect is that you're ingesting substances that block this enzyme, or this enzyme for that matter. So then another aspect yet further is you're just taking in too much histamine, and you're surpassing your natural body's production of diamine oxidase and histamine N-methyltransferase. Another aspect is you're also absorbing too much, maybe from like a leaky gut or something like that. So to put this in perspective into what we should avoid for histamine intolerance, we can see that sausages are very high in the scale, and so are all of these other tuna and mackerel, basically meats for the most part, along with some different vegetables. But I mean, obviously, see there's a very high degree of drop-off between meat products and animal or vegetable products. Besides, here we have eggs, and there's also milk. So this is important because we're going to have a degree of what would arguably be considered something that's better for us for something that's worse for us. The unfortunate thing is there's not a lot of good data on whether or not changing the diet is going to affect someone with acne. And it does help with histamine intolerance, but whether or not it helps to a significant degree for those people who have histamine intolerance to affect their histamine intolerant produced acne, I'm not really sure. But arguably this is a chance to make an action on it. So you can try and take this for what it's worth and also develop it further, hopefully with your own sort of research, whether or not you're just in a lab or if you're actually just sort of perusing the research and reviewing it like I am. So that speaks to histamine intolerance, and although it's important to note, I wouldn't argue it's necessarily something that you're going to want to be referencing constantly unless you know that you have a histamine intolerance. Nutritional deficiencies and acne. So this is one of the more talked about aspects about diet and acne, and it's usually around a discussion of holistic health healthcare practitioners or naturopathic doctors. And I think they kind of miss the point because a lot of the times they focus so much on the vitamins or nutrient deficiencies and supplement recommendations that they forget about the changes within the glycemic load and milk aspects. And and I don't think these actually have as strong a benefit as doing those recommendations. However, for certain people who are in very low ends, I think these deficiencies can have a tremendous effect on acne. The two ones that are really important for me personally, and what I think people should look out for, is vitamin D and zinc. And what I mean by look out for is actually take, supplement with. I would supplement with about 2,000 IUs of vitamin D and about 25 or 30 milligrams of vitamin of zinc. Sorry. So I think the difficulty is with vitamin, or I keep trying to call zinc a vitamin. The difficulties with finding 30 milligrams is apparent. So what I would just do is just break a 50 in half, and you're going to get the extra 5 milligrams through your diet. That's perfectly fine. So the other ones, although I think they're important and they're worth mentioning, I don't think there is an extensive enough literature on the literature to actually show benefit. Some considerations would be if you have low HDL, you might want to consider supplementing with B3 along with taking an omega-3 using algae oil. It doesn't have the contaminants that fish oil has, and it's also doesn't have mercury in them, which is one of the contaminants, but it's an important aspect to note individually. Now, as far as the ratio is concerned of your omega-3s to your polysaturated and your saturated fat, I think that's a definite concern, but I wouldn't really, put too much overbearing stress on sort of focusing on that. I think your diet, a healthy diet, will even those out naturally, and you don't need to basically, have a pinpoint accuracy on, oh, that's going to go over my, omega limit. Don't worry about that. I think, just you have enough to consider, and as far as, your, the diminishing return is concerned, you can focus on other things, like I mentioned previously. So I think that talks is what I wanted to speak about so far, and I would actually make one recommendation, which is I would eat things like sweet potato. I would focus on trying to get more things with vitamin A in your diet. Kind of speaking to the vitamins aspects, but also just because I think vitamin A is beneficial, but supplementing with it, you're not going to get the foods that are also beneficial, and you could exceed your vitamin A content if you have a healthy diet and supplementing. So that's why I wouldn't want to supplement with vitamin A, even though it does have some good benefits. So if you want to see more studies and literature and more graphs basically on these nutrients and their effect on acne, make a comment and I'll try to expand this a bit. Now, I would like to caution on the possibility that vitamin supplementation could and mineral supplementation can be detrimental. I mean, A, C, D, E, taken in extraordinary volumes, can result in a number of different conditions. And in fact, with zinc, if you're trying to dose yourself like crazy to try and get to my recommendation of I'm just recommending about 30 milligrams, but it's been documented that in certain individuals who are taking upwards of 400 milligrams of zinc a day can actually result in death. And the same thing can actually happen with iron as well. It's like one of the leading causes of infant deaths is when or not infant, but when children go in and try and get at their Flintstone vitamins and they take the whole bottle, they can get hematomicrosis and die. So I would again like to caution people from trying to take the mentality of more is better. This can be put into better perspective in relation to acne when you consider something like B6 and B12. B12 shots have been shown to actually result in acne lesions, and B6 as well, and this can be in part because of something I believe I discussed earlier, which is that P. acne actually needs B6 in order to survive. So it is a necessary component. It's part of its survival. So it's in taking, again, also deficiency may result in something the same, because not only does is P. acne bacteria needing B6, but our cells do too. So you can't just dose yourself out of acne or restrict yourself necessarily from acne. You need to take a dynamic approach when you're specifically talking about micronutrients, because, well, there's, for one, so much we don't know, and for two, a high degree of importance of them. And it's also another reason why you need to expand your range of variety of nutrient mediums from different types of plants and vegetables, because there could be other components that we're not getting that are important for us. Although on the hindsight, there also could be components that could be detrimental to our health, in like something as mainstream as onions. Maybe onions kill us. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that you also have to play devil's advocate on that one too. But I would certainly, most of the evidence points to the premise that consuming fresh fruit and vegetables is a good idea, and not staying in a very monolithic tone of your eating habits is good. Expanding your variety is good. If not, it just makes you sane. You don't want to continue to eat the same exact thing. But again, I stress the use of zinc and vitamin D, along with the restriction of something like an energy drink, which have high doses of B6 and 12, which are said to promote energy. And because of these high doses, these could result in acne development. 5-hour energy is one of those things that are even far and above energy drinks. Sex hormone binding globulin is a protein that we talked about before that has to do with the bioavailability or bioactivity of sex hormones. When this hormone binds to the sex hormone, when this protein binds to the sex hormone, it renders it basically inert and incapable of interacting with the things like androgen receptors, which testosterone would activate, which would be important when you're discussing acne. So, we can see here that the sex hormone is decreased by insulin. So if you're overweight, you could have increased potential for insulinemia, and therefore changes within your sex hormone binding globulin. Also, if you have increases in testosterone, interestingly enough, it decreases the production of sex hormones, or the sex binding hormone. So if you, say, got an injection of testosterone, you're going to actually have a decrease in sex hormone binding globulin. Sorry, it's kind of a long tangent of words. So it also is affected by cortisol levels. But with regards to diet in acne, we can see that olive oil is actually very important. By this account, it accounts for 24.4% of the variance in sex hormone binding globulin. So ensuring that you have a good amount of MUFAs, I shouldn't say olive oil, but things that have monosaturated fat, your monosaturated fat intake is an important indicator of sex hormone binding globulin. So something like olive oil is something to look for in that aspect. But remember, if you're eating a healthy diet, then you really don't have to worry too much about your ratios. So Also, soluble fiber has an important effect on it. Now, as far as exact foods and how they affect sex hormone binding globulin, you're going to look at rice, which actually can help increase it by 61%, vegetables by 50%, fish 42, meat 38. The strongest negative correlate was wheat, actually decreased it by over half. So by these accounts, you can sort of understand what foods you can possibly eat and what foods to eat more of potentially. What I will say about something like rice is that if you're eating white rice that's still high glycemic, remember that holds precedence over this sex hormone binding globulin aspect of diet. The best factor is to look at your glycemic load as far as your diet susceptibility to acne. But these are also something to consider potentially, especially with future research, as far as what to avoid and also what to eat. Insulin-like growth factor binding protein is something that's similar to sex hormone binding globulin, but it's with more specificity to insulin. And as we can see, there's 1 through 6, and they have a certain degree of variability between between the 6 of them. But I would argue that because they all are in relation to insulin, that they're all important for reducing insulin-like growth factor, which is an obviously important factor in that glycemic load aspect of acne. So you may be able to get to the point where you can actually tease out a dietary approach that increases insulin-like growth factor binding protein, and also increases their or decreases their proteases, the things that break them down. And so therefore you would have a higher concentration of this, lower insulin, lower acne occurrence, and potentially lower cancer rates and a number of other things potentially. But this is all just sort of theoretical and not necessarily something that can be actively sought out currently. I mean, you can look at research and do it, but I wouldn't necessarily think that these sort of dietary changes is something that can really be acted on quite yet. But you can see there's insulin receptor, type 1 growth factor receptor, and a couple other ones here, and then just basically inhibitors, and then you can also get the basically the specific protease that cuts the binding protein, and then a couple other things that are occurring here that create activation. So this is again an important part, something to look at. But remember, the glycemic load and reducing milk intake is on the top of the list as far as what you need to actively do. But as far as research, something like this would be very important to look towards. Diet and acne. It is not limited to what goes in you. So basically, what I mean by this is if you're eating a hot pizza that's all greased up and that gets on your chin, gets on your face, gets on your hands, and you begin to touch your face, wipe this, that, and the other thing, you're creating basically an alternative mechanism for which a diet can affect your skin. So, again, buttered up lobster that's, seeping on your chin or on your face, getting on your hands, which you then eventually touch your face, greasy pastries, and then again, just oiled up hands. This is basically a dietary mechanism that is nature by its matrix and method of consumption. So you should interpret this as well when you're considering whether or not a food product can be affecting your acne. It's what's going on, or what happens when you're eating that. And it's, I mean, that obviously has a certain degree of variability. If you're a very messy eater, well, that's maybe something to consider. If you're a very clean eater and that you know you're not going to touch your face after you've eaten a pizza or something like that before you wash your hands, then you're going to be able to handle this. But I mean, certain foods, like say, like a hot pizza, or can sort of increase your body temperature, which has a tendency to make you sweat, make you itch, and then if you already have exacerbated acne, not only is that dairy going to affect you and the high glycemic nature of it, or fairly, and it's not actually that high, but that's because of the dairy. So that effect is actually going to potentially increase the irritability of your skin and therefore increase the likelihood you're going to touch your skin. So, I mean, again, that sort of varies independently. Certainly, certain people can say, no, that's a terrible idea to not touch my skin, I'm not going to do it, and they just have the willpower. But when you're looking at dietary approaches, you're not necessarily always looking for something that's going to be possible, but you're also going to look at something that doesn't require as much willpower to do. If you're constantly relying on willpower, then clearly you're not creating the easiest program in the world. So hopefully this is going to be close to that. Is eventually at the end, in my synopsis, it'll be one of the easiest approaches and most holistic approaches to clearing acne. Sleep deprivation can affect many things, and acne is also one of them. There was one study specifically that looked at basically whether or not someone is going to be fatigued when they wake up and whether they're going to have acne, and as it shows, fatigue upon rising is associated with acne. So how can we basically ensure that we get the best quality of sleep, and what are some of the mechanisms and means by which sleep deprivation or poor sleep can affect acne? So the first thing when talking about sleep is we need to understand that there's at least 3 components to it. So there's the length of sleep, there's the waking and bed times, and there's sleep quality, basically your flow from REM sleep to deep sleep and all the in-betweens. So these are going to affect, any one of these could basically cause you to have fatigue upon rising. If you don't get, a long enough sleep, you don't go through enough you don't go through enough sleep cycles, you basically end up being fatigued. Now, if you were to drink alcohol or maybe even take certain sleep aids, you're going to affect your sleep quality or your REM and deep sleep, so you could stay fatigued for that reason. Yet another is basically you have something called your suprachiasmatic nucleus, which secretes melatonin, among other things, and basically helps regulate your whole body using a sort of biological ticking mechanism. And this basically tells your body it's morning or it's night. And basically, if you go to bed at irregular periods, your body is never going to basically have a flow to this clock, and it's always going to be over adjusting. And as a result, going to bed and waking up at improper times, basically, or irregular times, is basically going to make you have to force to get up, and it's going to give you poor sleep quality and fatigue upon waking. So another measure of this is basically, this is just one quick study that showed that health is directly correlated with perceived tiredness. So the healthier you are, the less fatigued you seem to be, and the more tired you are, the less healthy you are among attraction and then attraction and health. So the healthier someone looks, the more attractive they look. So we're going to get into the mechanisms now. So it's kind of absurd how many things are affected by sleep. Everything from melatonin to inflammatory markers such as substance P, histamine, adrenaline, and testosterone are all affected, and insulin as well. And there's just so much that is very dependent upon sleep that, I mean, cortisol, it goes without saying that it's going to have a strong influence on your acne, along with basically your irritability. And as we know, with irritability comes stress upon more situations, and so you're basically going to end up having more acne, for at least from a mechanism of basically sleep loss, and then a mechanisms of added stress. So it's basically synergistic. Something else which is a little bit less valid, and certainly more people are, or less people are susceptible to this sort of mechanism, is that basically your liver is on a clock as well, and how it basically breaks things down and how active it is. And if you have toxins in your system, such as PCBs, you could have an increase in the total quantity of PCB in your system if you're exposed and chronically having sleep loss. So, and that's kind of rough but it's kind of a mechanism. I just don't want to, numb your brain over with too much. One last thing, or two last things. Basically, we have obstructive sleep apnea. So basically, when you can't breathe at night and you keep periodically waking up, something you should check for if you have a lot of visceral fat. You can basically end up with sleep deprivation because you're never getting deep enough sleep and you're not going through the cycles. And other things that can affect that are things like lights or noises that can sort of startle you but not wake you, and so your body doesn't go through the complete rest cycles. So trying to get the best quality sleep is something that is very important for acne, I feel, and the evidence is suggestive of it. So the last thing I want to say is a little bit more expanded, and it's on the next slide. So this is just another visual representation of what's going on with things like growth hormone, cortisol interactions with your immune system, how things are coated, and potentially some sort of allergen exposure. And over here we also have that same sort of sleep-wake cycles and its important implications for the immune system. And obviously, if your immune system is affected, whether that be through cytokines such as IL-6, you have potential for an increase in inflammation. And if you already have a bunch of pimples on your face, that's basically going to increase the rate of aggravation. And this is just a general diagram of what happens when you go to sleep. So when you first go to sleep, you have basically exceptional deep sleep, and then your sleep gets shallower and shallower until you awake. Is it always like that? No, actually, each person's cycle is different in its topography, but they're mostly 90 minutes in cycle. So basically, from peak to peak, you're going to have about a 90-minute interval between them. Okay. exercise, anti-inflammatory, pro-inflammatory effects. So if you've ever wondered how muscle grows, it grows through not only testosterone, but it also grows through certain signaling molecules such as IL-6, which are increased exceptionally in when you've had a strong bout of physical exercise, along with IL-1, which we know the importance of in relation to acne. So there is also some sort of anti-inflammatory influences of exercise. One of those being, your IL-10 is increased. But again, remember when I was talking about inflammation and anti and pro, and it's kind of subjective. It really just matters what it does. And in this case, what we want to consider with acne is that there's some basis of molecules that have a hyperproliferative and adhesive effect, which is IL-1 and IL-6. So if those are increased in exercise, could exercise influence acne? I would suggest yes, but certainly wouldn't consider not exercising for a reason of getting acne. I think there's certain things you can do, and maybe there's also a period where you can refrain from for a month or so if you're extremely susceptible to things like your sweat or basically having too much pressure on your face. You get all red from pushing the bar or something like that. That can also have an influence on vasodilation and potentially the irritation that develops. Now I could keep kicking around basically immune molecules and its interaction with adrenaline or testosterone increases or decreases post-exercise, or even something like fat, which if you have a whole lot of fat in your system, you could have exceptional levels of macrophages and basically releases of inflammatory molecules, but when it's sort of smaller and everything's copacetic, it's not as inflammatory. So this would suggest that being overweight could influence inflammation and therefore potentially your skin. See, everything can be just somehow kicked over to inflammation, and therefore something is now related to acne. It's not necessarily true. But if you have an individual who feels that exercise is influencing their acne, you can certainly make the case for it. But the reality is that there's some things that you can focus on in order to decrease your susceptibility. Let's look at those now. Stress and exercise are basically completely intertwined. You can't actually work out without causing your body physical stress. That said, there's psychological components of stress that can be visited, and you can actually see exercise at times to be a psychological stress relief. And in that way, if you can use it that way, you can actually induce benefits. Akin to that, you can still exercise with a great deal of enthusiasm, and you can still stress because you missed a set or something like that. But the important thing is that you use stress as a part of a healthy regime, or I should say, you should use exercise as a part of a healthy regime. And there's certain components that are exceptionally aggravating as far as acne is concerned. One, with regards to exercise, is a specific type of exercise, which is squatting. When you squat, you have a big bar right across your back. This bar puts a lot of weight on you, and your shoulders, which at times can have pimples. Now, that mechanical stress is going to exacerbate your condition. So doing things like having a foam padding over the bar, or having overwear like a sweatshirt or something can be quite helpful. The same is to be said about benching. Having something that just goes over the platform you're going to be laying down on is helpful. You don't want gym wear that's going to be too tight and abrasive. You don't want like mesh. And the other thing you don't want is you don't want to be dehydrated. Dehydration will cause additional stress, additional hormonal changes, and it could give you basically sleep deprivation, and rendered you in this sort of, this is hotly debated, but a kind of overtrained state, a state of exhaustion even after you wake up, even after you try and go through the motions, and maybe sleep the next day. You could be, if you continue to be dehydrated, essentially you're kind of in this, especially after exercising, you're going to be in a very stressed and deprived state. There is a very interesting component of exercise as well, which is sweat. Sweat, in the vast majority of cases, is produced when you exercise. And there's many different components to sweat that we can see having an influence on our skin. Now, we'll look at those in the next slide. So the mineral composition of sweat is sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium, magnesium, trace metals, zinc, copper, iron, chromium, nickel, and lead. There are other components such as phospholipases, interleukin 1, defensin 1, uric acid, along with other things. But as far as the minerals are concerned, those are them from greatest to least. Why are the minerals important? Well, because that's potentially what's causing osmotic stress. So basically, when you have a high concentration of salt water moving over your face, it pulls the water that's on your skin up, or in your cells, out of it, and therefore, as the water basically tries to create an equilibrium. So that causes stress and irritation, along with the other chemicals that I mentioned here. There is an aspect of itching and vasopermeability that's also playing a role as far as what is making your skin stress or sweat, like how sweat is actually secreted. There is also a premise that basically because the sweat is moving over your skin, it's also spreading the oils that are on your skin and the bacteria. So because it basically mobilizes many different components on your face, it has a potential for causing irritation and spreading of acne. It also activates touch receptors. Just simply something moving over your face is going to make you feel itchy, because it's a natural impulse that we've evolved to have when anything moves over our skin, to become alert of it and likely to become itched by it. Because say a mosquito lands on you with a malaria virus or something like that, you're going to want to make sure you get rid of that and kill it before it actually tries to stick you with a malaria-ridden needle, basically. So what should you do as far as, when you work out? Should you wash before, wash after? What are the components of that? Well, for me, I believe it's you should be drying. Because the sweat basically dries on your skin, and you get that skin tightness as a result of post-workout sweat residing on your skin. You're going to want to wash your face probably before it dries, so before 15 minutes. And although there's also other factors such as the mobilization of sweat over your skin, as long as you wash your face in the morning, or as long as you wash your face at night, and you should be fine. I would say if you wash your face at night and then after you've worked out, then take a shower, you're going to be in good shape, and you're going to have the most minimal amount of time with your skin having irritants on it. So that's what I wanted to talk about with sweat. But there's another component of sweat that is important with regards to the sweat duct, and that is something called milia. So basically, milia are clear skin-colored bumps on your skin, and they're a result of a clogged sweat gland. They're not acne, so they need to be treated differently. Why that sweat gland is clogged is maybe similar to acne. However, it seems to be more focused around actual physical damage and sort of the healing of that. So now the thing is that milia can also appear outside of the sweat gland, but 74% of milia are residing in the sweat gland. Some of them are kind of just ambiguous in the skin and come from random origins. There's two other origins that make up the 25%, but they include like just the skin throughout, and then I think another gland, which I think the apocrine gland actually. So that covers sweat for the most part and how you should treat it with regards to acne. The placebo effect. The placebo effect is basically the belief that something is affecting something. In this case, it's the belief that something is affecting your skin. The placebo effect is kind of the positive light. There's another term for the negative influences, but for this we'll just use the simplicity of the placebo effect. So there are real biological consequences of the placebo effect. Basically, if you believe that something is influencing your skin, good or bad, you're going to have an influence on your skin. So let's say that it's bad, so you're going to have decreases in confidence, and you're going to have increases in stress. And as we know, stress influences your skin. So if you believe that something is good, you're going to have increases in confidence, and you're going to actually have decreases in stress because you finally have some hope that your skin's going to get better. So is it good for me or is it bad for me? Well, basically, it's in part what you believe to be true. You can influence a product's effectiveness by believing in it, and that's something I think that you should be encouraged to do. You should be encouraged to believe in this product, if you want to call it that. This program, I should say. Now, another thing is that this may not stand the test of time. So if you're being marketed to by me or some other commercial entity, you're gonna have a perception that it's going to be working, but eventually it's gonna waver after a year or two, or after like a month to like 6 months, because it's not working to the degree that you thought it would, or something of that nature, and basically it deteriorates your belief in a product. So keep in mind though, this program will work regardless of whether or not you believe in it. Now, the other aspect is that if you have a strong religious belief, you may, if you think that there's some sort of direct intervention by God or some other deity, you're going to have improvements in your skin that could stand around much longer than something that you've just been marketed to. Unfortunately, we don't have an objective view of this. A comparison like this, let's say a control where someone doesn't believe in anything, you have someone who's been commercially marketed to, and then someone with strong religious beliefs that are just starting now to pray. So if you did a comparison of all those, we might be able to see variations in the placebo effect and how effective it is. But until now, we can just basically suggest that the placebo effect is a caveat that's very individualistic and is dependent upon stress among some other factors. So if anything, I would encourage you to believe in a product and hope that it's going to work. Now, if you believe that something isn't going to work, if you're a pessimist about it, probably isn't going to work. So if you use logic and belief, as you would do with this program, you should be astounded by your results. Something else that's very interesting is super and non-responders and basically the outliers of many studies. So there are people out there that are exercise non-responders. Their VO2 max, their amount that they can actually do, their cardiovascular system, simply doesn't improve with endurance exercise. So this was in a controlled study where they asked the participants and witnessed the participants exercising, and some people improved and some people just didn't. And so looking at certain genes of these individuals, they were able to basically piece apart what genetic influence is having on the adaptive response to, in this case, endurance exercise on VO2 max. So this would sort of make the case that someone may have an exceptional response to a certain treatment, and other people may just have no response to a treatment. But because this program works on many different areas and many different mechanisms, it will work for everybody. And some people may see results sooner than later, but this program will work for everybody. So this is something to sort of keep in mind too, is that you may find that one particular thing is this godsend for you. So one particular part of this program that, everything else doesn't even matter now because I found the one thing that this program has told me to do, whether that's glycemic index or getting enough sleep. And then all of a sudden all my acne cleared up, because you, again, could be doing something so bad in that one area and everything else decently enough that your skin's going to get better, or that one factor is dramatically influencing your skin. So because you're genetically susceptible to it. So this is a pretty interesting premise, but and it again is a sort of a caveat to any system or any product that I would say, well, you said that this was bad, and this is the one caveat that I can say, is that, well, statistically it is a bad product, but can you have benefit? Is it possible? Yeah, you could, either by your belief that it works, by some sort of miracle, genetic miracle, or you just got everything in the right order to make it work. So or make it seem like it works. So let's continue on with this exciting lecture. Water. So water is actually something that a lot of people put a lot of weight on when they're discussing a cure for acne. And they actually put a lot of weight on it with regards to anything that is associated with health. If you're trying to get rid of toxins, or if you're trying to, reduce your risks of almost any ailment, it seems like everyone wants to come back to the purest and best water. So the issue here is that there really isn't a whole lot of research surrounding around water, and the only general recommendation I can get is about 2 liters of water, and that's from a dermatologist, and I'm trying to look from a acne perspective, so getting a dermatologist perspective on how much water to take in seems to be the best route. So I think it really is a strong motivation for scientists and other people to test out the effects of water consumption and the level of water consumption on acne, because really we just don't have anything. There's components of it, so we know that for the acid mantle and the skin barrier, that water is an essential aspect. You need moisture to the skin. If you're completely dehydrated, you're don't have moisture to your skin. So ensuring that you are hydrated will ensure that your skin stays hydrated and supple. So it seems to be important that it would be important for the differentiation and proper functionality of the sebaceous glands and keratinocytes. Along with, there's elements that dehydration has strong effects on things like tumor necrosis factor alpha and other certain inflammatory markers, but the amount of research that's surrounding around acne is very minuscule. One concern that people have is overhydration. So you really don't get anywhere of overhydration until you're about 5 liters. And I would recommend about 2 liters a day. You could get into actual real life concerning trouble if you're taking in 10 to 20 liters within a few hours. So you don't really need to be concerned about overhydration or hydrogen poisoning. The people that may need to be concerned about it are babies. So when you basically formulate formula, there's only a certain amount of water that you're supposed to put in. If you put in over that amount trying to stretch your formula, which is done in poorer households occasionally, you may run into this concern because the baby needs nourishment so much that it'll overhydrate itself, and because it's so small, it's possible to do so. There are certain elements that there could be releases of toxins, but because the more you take in, the more water you can, or the more medium you have to actually release these toxins. And there's certain components and inflammatory markers that are present in urine, so it kind of could make sense. But again, we don't have the research there supporting it to a solidified degree, particularly with regards to acne. So I would recommend 2 liters a day, and don't try and take 2 liters all at night. The idea is that you stay hydrated throughout the day, because that's going to give you the best effect. Hydrating all in one shot is going to do nothing but make you release any excess. So if you hold on and let yourself perspirate and breathe, as that's the primary, and urinate, those are the primary means that which you're going to release water. So you're going to continually have the maximum saturation of water and the best or maximum healthy saturation of water and the best functionality of your sebaceous glands and keratinocytes and basically your whole body. And that would be dependent upon exercise, but still 2 liters will get you about there. So that is most of my concerns with regards to internal water intake and acne.